everybody. In this video, I'm going to talk about the zodiac sign Aries. You may or may not have planets in Aries in your birth chart, but regardless, everybody has Aries somewhere in their birth chart, and so it is relevant for everybody. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and it is a cardinal fire sign. And there are 3 fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and 4 cardinal signs, one from each element. So the cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And that means that Aries is the only cardinal fire sign. And cardinal signs are good at initiating things, and fire signs are super active. So those are 2 major characteristics of Aries, being quick to start things, being really energetic. And we're going to go through a whole bunch of characteristics of Aries in a little while. It does matter which planets fall in Aries for a person and how that will impact how that sign's energies show up in a particular person's life. But also, even if you don't have any planets in Aries, one of your houses in a whole sign house system will be represented by Aries, and the ruler of Aries is Mars. So even if you don't have any planets in the sign of Aries, then that house is still being affected by its energies, and Mars is located somewhere in your chart, and it is also having an impact on that area. And its relationship, the sign that it's in, its relationship to Aries is also super important for you. So that, I think, is the basics. I'm going to talk about some of the ancient significations, some of the modern significations of Aries. I'm going to talk about the archetypes associated with Aries. I'm going to talk about how there are 15 different combinations of Sun, Mercury, Sun and Aries with various Mercury and Venus signs, because Mercury and Venus can only get so far from the Sun. That limits it to 15 possible combinations with Aries as the Sun sign. And I'm going to specifically talk about a handful of people. I think there's 15 total, but then I'm going to talk about 7 different people who have at least 2 of those 3 planets in Aries. And just to show how some of the Aries characteristics show up, and how like having that 3rd planet in a different sign can add another element to it. And I think that's basically it. I'm going to throw out some correspondences with like crystals and plants and stuff at the end. And yeah, I can't wait to get started. I'm just barely getting it in before Aries season is over. But like I said, it's not just about the sun and Aries. So Aries is relevant all year long. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the dates for Aries, and I'm going to show you how you can use astroseek.com to find the exact time that the sun moves into Aries, or any planet. Like Neptune just went into Aries. Saturn will be pretty soon. So I also thought of a couple things I meant to mention in the last section. The glyph for Aries, I showed that on the last screen, so you probably saw that. It looks like ram's horns, and the ram is the symbol of Aries. And I did mention that Mars is the planetary ruler of Aries. The ancient sources refer to it more as a domicile lord, more like a landlord. And Mars rules 2 signs, Aries and Scorpio. So it's affecting 2 different areas of your chart, and has a major say on like the outcome of those areas of your life. And there's also, in addition to having a planetary ruler for Aries, there's also one planet that is exalted in Aries, and that means that it's like at its strongest, it's able to like, it has like all the resources it needs to be able to succeed and do its job, and that would be the sun. So the sun is exalted in Aries. According to Valens, the sun is specifically exalted at 19 degrees Aries, but it's really exalted in the whole sign. So I wanted to mention that as well. And I think that that was everything I forgot to say. Oh, and also I wanted to point out the difference between constellations and zodiac signs. When we're talking about Aries and the other signs, we're not talking about the constellations. They don't even line up anymore because of precession. So it is different. Like I like to think of the constellations as like the thing that they're representing. So like when I look at the constellation of Aries, like I'm actually referring to it in my mind as the ram, or like for Pisces, it's like the constellation of the fish. Just because it makes it less confusing, because we're talking about something different when we're talking about the zodiac signs. We're talking about like a system of separating the night sky from the vantage point of the earth into these 12 different areas, and in whole signs houses, we're having like 30 degree. I mean, they're always 30 degrees for each one, and because of that, it doesn't even make sense to line it up exactly with the constellations because the constellations aren't even like the same size. Like it's not like you can't perfectly divide up the night sky by the constellation. So it is separate. And precession does not disprove astrology or any of that nonsense. But if you want to know when you're looking for like where Aries is in the night sky and you're trying to like you see, say Mars is like just entering Aries and you see Mars in the sky and you're like, oh, that's where Aries is in the sky. And then that would mean the constellation you're looking at is actually Pisces. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I think, yeah, now we can get into the dates. So the sun enters Aries, and this is just the dates for the sun because, like, the moon enters Aries for a couple days out of every month, and other planets take longer to pass through a sign, and there's more time in between when they enter that sign. But the sun is in Aries for about a month out of every year, and it enters Aries March 20th or 21st, depending on if it's a leap year, depending on where in the world you are, and it leaves Aries and enters Taurus on April 19th or 20th, again, depending on the leap years and where you are in the world. So I want to show you using AstroSeek how you can find the exact time that a planet enters a sign. So if you are on astroseek.com and you go to free horoscopes over here on the left, and you go down to various astrology calculations, then there are two options. There's direct ingresses, which would be when any particular planet is going from one sign to another. So not just a specific sign, but like all the different signs. And you can see like a list. Or if you want to see like what time did or what day did the sun enter Aries in a bunch of years, you would go to ingresses and returns. And then you could go down here and you could say sun into Aries. And we'll just say like from, I don't know, 2015, calculate ingresses. And then it will show you. So most of them are the 20th. Then if we do, let's go back a little bit. Now you'll see there's some that are on the 21st. And I have this set. Okay, yeah, this isn't set to my time zone. Okay, so that's just what I wanted to show you. It's pretty helpful. But like I said, you could also, if you wanted to do, just go back how I showed you so you can see it again, various astrology midpoints. And then you could do direct ingresses up here. And then you could do any planet. So let's say, because Neptune just entered Aries, and let's go back a little bit, and then you can see. So because it takes so long to go through each sign that it hasn't actually done anything else since 2020 besides enter Aries. I should have gone back further just to show you a variety of what's already happened in our lives. So here we go. In 84, it entered Capricorn, 98, it entered Aquarius, and so on. And then we have this most recent one. It entered Aries on March 30th, and it won't enter Taurus until 2038. So this is all Neptune in all the different signs. All right, so now we're just going to quickly go over some of the archetypes and characteristics associated with the zodiac sign Aries. Um, Currently, in modern times, I mean, some of these definitely go way back, and some you don't see so much in the older sources. But basically, when people talk about Aries today, what are they saying? They're talking about the hero, the pioneer, the trailblazer, the leader, the athlete, the adventurer. Those are all different archetypes associated with Aries. Aries characteristics could include energetic, confident, restless, strong willed, independent, courageous, resilient, short attention span, quick temper, tends to get over it quickly though, quick in general, impulsive, impatient, willing to take risks, self-centered versus self-reliant, like two different sides to that coin, assertive versus aggressive, active, honest, enthusiastic, motivated, charismatic, and charming, loves new challenges, new ideas, new projects, new goals, anything new, direct, competitive, adventurous, child at heart, motivated by challenge or competition, needing an outlet for energy, could be physical or mental. It depends on what planets are falling in the sign. So, like, not any, if you just because you have your sun in Aries, doesn't mean all these characteristics are going to apply to you. Um, and you could have a bunch of planets in Aries and not all of these things will apply to you because it depends on the whole chart and how the different planets are interacting. And for a lot of people, you might only have one planet in Aries or two or none. And just some of this is going to really resonate, but not everything. So now on to more ancient descriptions of Aries, and you'll notice that they can be pretty negative, pretty intense, but that's just kind of how they described things back then. And first of all, their lives were probably harder and more intense to begin with, but also by giving extreme examples of different things. And I think that the idea was then you could show the full range of what was possible, but that there was this understanding, and like Valens talks about it a lot, of like all the different mitigations and the ways that things will not usually be the most extreme outcome because yes, maybe this particular placement could mean something that is really intense, but there's probably other things going on in the chart. There's so much going on at once that there's other things that are making it less intense and are balancing it out or adding some sort of a positive energy into that situation. So this is just Aries according to Vedic Valens from the 2nd century. Aries is the house of Mars, a masculine sign, tropic, terrestrial, governing, fiery, free, upward trending, semi-vocal, noble, changeable, procuratorial, public, civic, with few offspring, servile, the midheaven of the universe and the cause of rank, two-toned, since the sun and the moon make white lichen. It is also unaspected and ecliptic. Depending on its relationship with the house ruler, men born under the sign will be brilliant, distinguished, authoritarian, just, hard on offenders, free, governing, bold in thought, boastful, great-hearted, restless, unstable, haughty, inflated, intimidating, quickly changing, wealthy. When the house rulers are favorably situated and have benefics in aspect, kings and powerful men are born, those having the say over life and death. And this is from Mark Riley's translation of Valens's anthology. I gave page numbers 6 to 7. That's from the print version. I know you can find it online too, and I'm not sure if it lines up page wise. So here's Valens on the terms of Aries. So each zodiac sign can be split into 5 different terms, or now a lot of people will call them bounds, like the Egyptian bounds. Valens called them terms, and they are not, interestingly, they are not even divisions, and there is not a clear explanation of why certain planets are given rulership over certain parts of each sign, but they are really interesting, and I want to do another video about how they work in practice because it really does seem to resonate and work very effectively, even if we don't know exactly why it is set up this way. So Valens on the terms of Aries. The first 6 degrees of Aries belongs to Jupiter, temperate, robust, prolific, beneficent. The next 6 degrees belong to Venus, cheerful, clever, radiant, even, pure, handsome. The following 8 degrees fall under the ambiguous influence of Mercury, changeable, clever, idle, windy, stormy, full of thunder and lightning. The next 5 degrees belong to Mars, baneful, fiery, unsteady, characteristic of rash, wicked men. The next 5 degrees belong to Saturn, cold, barren, malicious, injured. Valens also says that the sun is exalted at 19 degrees of Aries specifically. I think I mentioned that already. And he also associates Aries with the head, sensory faculties, specifically eyesight, as well as anything afflicting those areas. So now we're going to talk about what Aries means to you based on your rising sign. And to find your rising sign, you would need to know what time you're born. It's usually on your birth certificate. And if you enter into pretty much any of the free astrology websites, and you can find out your rising sign, also called the ascendant. So in whole sign houses, wherever the ascendant falls, that entire house becomes the first house, and then the other houses are just laid out in order counterclockwise. So that depending on your rising sign, Aries would fall in a different location in your chart. In this example, you have Leo rising, and then you look for the little ram's heads, and you see the ram head horn, and you see that glyph up here in the ninth house, and that would be where Aries is, the ninth house for Leo rising. And even though you may or may not have placements in Aries, its energy will still be affecting that area of your life and your relationship to that part of your life. And also, everybody will have transits through every sign that they experience throughout their life. So understanding where Aries in your chart will help you when you hear that like Neptune just went into Aries. Like, where is that for you? It's going to be determined based on your rising sign. So I wanted to show you, I learned this game. Oh, and also you have to think about the chart as a whole, and you have to think about where Mars is because Mars is the ruler of Aries and what condition it's in and what it's doing at any given time. So I wanted to mention that also. But I learned this game from the astrologer Gemini Brett, who's amazing, and you should check him out. He has a lot of courses. He has a constellations community online that's really awesome. And he's going to be lecturing at Norwalk. Anyway, you should definitely check him out. But I wanted to show you the game because it's been really helpful to me. So you get these astro dice, and like one has the different zodiac signs on it, and the other has just the numbers 1 to 12. And you roll them and you consider if the zodiac sign represents the rising sign, and then you look at the house that it's saying for the number, and then you think about what is the relationship between that rising sign and that house and whatever sign falls in that house. So like if I rolled these and I got Gemini rising in the ninth house, then I would do the math and I know that for Gemini rising, the ninth house is Aquarius. And I would ask, well, the ninth house is about like our beliefs, how we learn about the world, like the school of life, basically. And I would think like, how does Gemini go to the school of Aquarius? How does Gemini learn about the world through Aquarius? Why does Gemini believe in Aquarius? There's like no right question necessarily, just as long as it's like related to ninth house topics, you could think about it from a bunch of different angles, and they're all profound if you really like meditate on them. Um, Especially if it's like personal, if it's your chart and like really thinking about it from a personal perspective and like how that works for you in your life. And then I would think, like how Gemini always wants to learn about everything, and almost like a preschooler who keeps asking like why, and Aquarius believes that things should be questioned. You don't just accept the status quo, you question it. So there's like that correspondence there between like the beliefs of the ninth house and like the attitude and approach towards life of Gemini. And so it's just like that. And you could do it in a bunch of different ways, and it's really interesting. Or you could think about like how Aquarius can be like the weird or that's like outside of the box, and how Gemini would be like fascinated by that and how Gemini would want to learn about that and go to that school. So yeah, that's just like how the game works. I think it's really interesting. So I'm going to go through um, rising sign by rising sign and just talk about how um, for that rising sign Aries shows up in the chart. All right, so if you have Aries rising, then obviously Aries is your first house. So your rising sign in your first house is how you approach life. It's the path that you're on. It's what you said yes to when you were born. It's what was rising up over the horizon. It's the direction in which you're oriented as you go on your journey through life. Um, it is how you approach life. So you are on a path. If you have Aries rising, you're on a path of action, independence, trailblazing. You approach life with enthusiasm and energy. You approach it with bravery. You also are on the path of those different archetypes we talked about. So you're on the path of the hero, the trailblazer, the pioneer, the competitor, the leader, the risk taker. So that one's pretty straightforward. So if you have Taurus rising, as you can see in the chart, Aries falls in the 12th house. And the sign that falls in the 12th house can sometimes be energy that's harder for us to access. It's so this like ability to act without overthinking, the willingness to take risks, to put ourselves first, to be truly independent and allow ourselves to be competitive and assertive. It may be harder for those with Taurus rising. This can be something we learn throughout our lifetimes, or it can be something that remains difficult for us to access. Taurus rising can have this energy of don't rush me and let me do things at my own pace. And Aries is much quicker energy. Of course, Taurus is more likely to stay focused on a long-term goal and less likely to lose interest and move on to something new. So the relationship between the 12th and the first house goes both ways. They can't see each other. So it depends on the entire chart and how if there are any planets in the 12th or the first that counteract this. What's Mars, the ruler of Aries, doing? The 12th house can also be how we connect with the mysterious or hidden parts of life and the universe. And Aries here could be forging a new path in our spirituality. So with Gemini rising, Aries falls in the 11th house. So Aries in the 11th, it's like, how do we approach friends and groups with the energy of Aries if you are a Gemini rising? How does Gemini fit in groups through Aries? Um, and with Aries in the 11th house, it almost indicates leadership in groups more than fitting into the groups. It indicates starting groups, competitiveness, athletics, trailblazing when it comes to group organization or humanitarian work. And Aries like attitude towards personal goals and dreams, because 11th house can also be like how we dream and what our goals are. With Gemini rising, you have a person who needs communication and who wants to be surrounded by people and having that interaction and exchange of ideas. So it would make sense for someone with Gemini rising to approach groups as in like, let's start more, let's bring more people together. So that's kind of how those two fit together like that. And the idea also of the short attention span when it comes to your dreams and also the groups you're in, um, that makes sense for someone with Gemini rising who, similarly to Aries, might move on from one thing to another a little bit more quickly. And for Cancer rising, you can see that Aries falls in the 10th house, and it's a question of how does Cancer rising fit into the world, find its place in the world through Aries. And for those with Cancer rising, Aries shows up as this house of career, calling, a place in the world. If you consider the nurturing and protective qualities of Cancer and how that path is called to create and protect a unit of some kind, like a family unit or a close group of friends that becomes like that unit that they want to protect, or even like in terms of like military service or someone, you could see Cancer rising with somebody who's like feeling called to protect like their country. Um, if you think about that sort of energy and that path in life for Cancer rising, and you think about how it requires you to be brave and independent in public, to have that um, persona of the hero or any of those sorts of aspects of Aries in public, and how if Cancer rising is trying to create safety for others, then willing to be brave is important. So, all right, so for Leo rising, Aries is in the 9th house. And how does and why does Leo learn about the world through Aries? And how does Leo believe in Aries? And it really comes down to like believing in the self, and Leo on this path of trying to shine its light brightly and exude that confidence and self-assurance that we can associate with like a really healthy Leo persona. And the brave approach to travel, higher education, the willingness to take risk, that puts Leo rising on this path of brightly shining its light in the world. And how to learn about the world through taking risks and action and independence is like an important thing for someone who's trying to be almost bigger than life. All right, so for Virgo rising, Aries is in the 8th house. And how is Aries the death of Virgo, or the place where the self dies and merges with the other? Because if you think of the 7th house as partnership and marriage, then the 8th house is like where it gets really real. And if you consider Virgo as a sign of service and groundedness, then the Aries need to put the self first and act independently. That could be viewed as like a sort of death for Virgo. It's just like so different than what comes naturally to Virgo. But in order to fully merge in a partnership, you still need to be able to think about yourself. You can't completely give that away. You need to be able to hold on to some independence and be able to take some risks that the like more passive sign of Virgo may be less naturally inclined to take. And I think that those things, that risk taking and ability to put the self first sometimes and hold on to your own independence, are like important components for Virgo rising to be able to in a healthy way merge with another person in partnership. So for Libra rising, you can see that Aries is in the 7th house. Aries is the opposite of Libra, but they're both about that access of finding the balance between the independent self and the partnership. So how does Libra partner with Aries? True partnership involves that willingness to put yourself first sometimes too, to not allow yourself to lose yourself in a relationship. And why is Libra drawn to Aries? Because that's another aspect of the seventh house. It's like the partner in like this grand sense. So I think that Libra is drawn to Aries for that ability to act, that sometimes like Libra indecisiveness might be drawn to someone who will just be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, we don't need to overthink this. The willingness to make a choice and move forward. And also the Aries charm, because Libra is also very charming in its own way. And the honesty of Aries. And I also think that with Libra being ruled by Venus and Aries being ruled by Mars, that there's like a natural, like that those two planets go together so well in terms of relationships, like the physical attraction component and also the like emotional love component, like that they just merge well. And if you think about Libra and Aries being opposite, and then also the other two Venus and Mars signs, Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Taurus is ruled by Venus, and that they're also opposites. And there's something about that that just works well together, I would say. So for Scorpio rising, Aries is in the sixth house. And for the sixth house, I like to ask, like in this case, why must Scorpio practice Aries? How is Aries important daily work for Scorpio? Aries moves on quickly, something that Scorpio might need to practice. Scorpio can get lost or stuck digging deep into things, holding on to things, while Aries is more likely to act and to move on. Scorpio can obsess over emotions and relationships, while Aries is more focused on the self, the goals, what can I do next? Scorpio can be drawn to the dark or the morbid, while Aries tends to be somewhat childlike, eager, enthusiastic in how it approaches the world. And both are ruled by Mars, but totally different sides of Mars. And learning how to access the other side to your chart ruler can be a really healthy way to find balance. So for Sagittarius rising, Aries is in the fifth house. How does Sagittarius create Aries? How does Sagittarius enjoy life through Aries? Thinking of Sagittarius rising as a path of seeking truth, learning, and experience, it can find enjoyment through action, through the willingness to act without overthinking, through the adrenaline rush of new experiences. Sagittarius creates Aries because in seeking wisdom, learning, and experience, we might need to set out on our own, be pioneers or trailblazers. There's also an element of the wise hermit in Sagittarius and the lone wolf in Aries that have some quality of like determined independence in common with each other. Capricorn rising, Aries falls in the fourth house. How does Capricorn find its roots in Aries? So it's important to point out that whatever your first house sign is, your rising sign, whatever its um, modality is, cardinal, fixed, or mutable, then the four angular houses, the first, the 10th, the seventh, the fourth, are all going to be of that modality. And so there's something like important in common between those houses for everybody. And in terms of the fourth house giving root to the first, in this case, where Aries is the root of Capricorn, thinking about the ambitious nature of Capricorn, the goal-oriented nature of Capricorn, how it wants to build some like measurable version of success, it has a lot in common with Aries, actually. And Aries also wants to succeed and be the leader, be the hero, wants to act. Um, that energy, that almost like childlike enthusiasm to just like go, go, go and like win and succeed and like do things, start things, that can give root to this more like planned out version of ambition and striving for success that you find in Capricorn. Aries has this like sheer force of will and willingness to act and take risks on its path toward success that Capricorn needs to be able to channel to be able to accomplish everything that Capricorn rising wants to accomplish. All right, in Aquarius rising, Aries falls in the third house. And if Aquarius rising is a path of questioning the status quo, how does it find its voice and also its community through Aries? And it could be that the confidence to speak up through that Aries third house is necessary for Aquarius rising to be able to challenge the status quo, to be able to be the one to be like, actually, I don't know why we have to do that, or I don't know why it has to work like that. Also, that ability, that Aries ability to be a leader Aries doesn't necessarily like always want to be the leader, but just like finds itself in that position. Some Aries people are going to find that they do want to be in that leadership role. But sometimes it's more just like they want to start something and they want to do it, and like no one else is doing it, so they're going to have to because they're not going to wait around for someone else to do it. So then they have to be the leader. Um, and there's also like this reluctance in Aquarius to like take the lead. But sometimes they have to if they want to be able to make the changes that they want to make in the world. So there's that relationship between the two of them. And in terms of the third house representing like your local community and Aries being able to lead, then Aries in the third house can help Aquarius rising to be able to take that leadership role in a community setting. And why does Aquarius need to express Aries? If you think about the third house in terms of communication, Aquarius needs to be willing to go into new territory because you can't just question things without being willing to take risks and go new directions. So they are very much intertwined. All right, and the last one is Pisces rising, where Aries falls in the second house. So, just like with the 12th and the first house, the first and second houses don't have very much in common with each other. They're an aversion to each other. They can't see each other. But the second house can also be, it can be how we support ourselves, our values, our needs. How does Pisces support itself through Aries? Pisces needs to learn how to act independently, how to not get lost in like their dreams and their thoughts. Aries is very much in the world and in the present moment. That's something that Pisces needs a little bit of that energy to be able to like make it through the day. While Pisces has this larger awareness of the past and the future, in addition to the present moment, that part's a little bit harder, but also this sense of like timelessness, and they can get lost in their imagination or in the dream world. And Pisces needs Aries in order to confidently and bravely face the world to be able to put itself first sometimes and like draw some boundaries. So it doesn't get lost in a sense of oneness with others, and to balance out its natural empathy with some healthy self centeredness and self reliance. So, if you have your sun in Aries, then there are 15 possible combinations that you could have for the planets, the sun, Mercury, and Venus for what signs they're in. And this is because Mercury can only get up to one sign away from the sun in either direction. So, if your sun is in Aries, then Mercury could only be in Pisces, Aries, or Taurus. And Venus can get up to two signs away in either direction. So if your sun is in Aries, then Venus could be in only Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, or Gemini. So that adds up to 15 possible combinations of signs for those three planets. I found an example of one famous person who has each of those 15 combinations. You can see in this graphic here. I'm not going to go over all of them in depth. I'm going to go over 7 of the 15, which would be the 7 that have at least 2 of the 3 planets in Aries. And just because I don't want to spend like hours doing this video, but also I'm not going to go super in depth into each one. I just want to show you like how the energy of Aries can show up in a real person, and how like having one of those close personal planets in a different sign can like add a little different flavor to it, I guess you could say. Um, yes, I am aware that more than half of them are men and probably more than half of them are white. I'm trying to look real quick, but I find it frustrating too. It's like I look on SolarFire for charts, I look on AstroSeek for charts, and that is the majority of what's available. And then even when I find somebody who it doesn't just like fit into that mold over and over again, then half the time I look it up and I can barely find any biographical information. So it's like I have to not only find people where I can get their birth info, which is hard enough in itself, but then also people who have some availability of biographical information online so that it's interesting for me to talk about them, because if I don't know anything about them, then it doesn't really do anything to illuminate what I'm trying to talk about. Hopefully, in the future, there will be a more interesting variety of charts available online and on SolarFire. So first, I'm going to look at somebody who had the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Aries, and actually he also had Mars in Aries, and that's Napoleon III. And he was the leader archetype 100%. people, he's probably one of the first leaders people think of when they think about like really important and influential leaders in history. I looked at an article about his accomplishments on havefunwithhistory.com just to see, like, make sure I wasn't forgetting anything. I was only like somewhat aware of everything he had done. But there was just example after example of things that he initiated. So again, that Aries energy, but like things he initiated: the Bank of France, Legion of Honor, countless infrastructure projects like roads and bridges, the entire system of secondary schooling in France, the division of the French government into departments with the central government, the Napoleonic Code, which laid out clear laws for the public, and of course, there's his military success. Um, and that article attributed that part of that to his use of rapid maneuvering, which also feels very Aries. And then he seized power for himself. He crowned himself emperor and started a series of wars. And all of that fits in with his Aries stellium for sure. And what else do people think about when they think of Napoleon? They think of him failing miserably when he tried to invade Russia, and that was in 1812. Um, so he hoped to defeat the Russians really quickly, like within 3 weeks, but then he was outsmarted by them, who, like, the Russians just kept luring the French in deeper and deeper into Russia instead of just facing them in a battle, which he would have loved. Like, that Aristotelian would have loved to just like fight him, have it out, succeed, win really quickly, and then just get out of there. Um, they couldn't do that. They didn't play along the way he wanted to. So the French were defeated. They couldn't continue into the Russian winter. That was impossible. And it was like 1 million people died in the end. They couldn't even make it out in time before winter came. And it was this major fiasco. So that is Napoleon. And I think you can just see from like all the things he did and also his like approach towards governing and the military actions that he did, it just feels very Aries. All right, and then for our next example, we're going to look at someone who has the Sun and Mercury in Aries, but Venus in Aquarius, and that's Anne McCaffrey. And I'm not going to talk about her very long. I just wanted to point out that she was the first woman to win a Hugo Award for fiction. She was the first to win a Nebula Award. She was a sci-fi writer. And just that like energy of like being the first to win, that is so Aries, but then also that especially like first to win like a writing award is like Mercury in Aries. Um, but then also that like Venus in Aquarius and like her like writing aesthetic being this like sci-fi, like ahead of her time sort of energy that you could also see with Aquarius. All right, so I love this example. I think it's really just like perfect and simple, and it won't even take that long to explain, but it just lines up so perfectly. So Vincent van Gogh had Sun and Mercury in Aries, but then Venus in Pisces. And I don't have a time for his birth, so the chart that you can see there just has Aries rising, but we don't actually know like where Aries fit in his chart. But that doesn't actually matter because regardless of what time he was born, the Sun and Mercury were still in Aries and Venus was in Pisces. So Van Gogh was definitely a trailblazer in art. I think I even saw one article that literally called him a trailblazer in art. And Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Venus is like really well situated to succeed in Pisces. And obviously, he was incredibly artistic and creative. Um, I looked at this article about him on biographyonline.net. There's an article about Van Gogh there, and it said that he developed a style of painting that was quick and rapid, leaving no time for contemplation and thought. He painted with quick movements of the brush and drew increasingly avant-garde style shapes, foreshadowing modern art in its abstract style. So he was like the first to do it, or at least one of the first. I'm not entirely sure, but he's definitely ahead of his time. And also that like quick and rapid style and like not stopping to think, that is also perfect for that Aries energy, but then the Venus Pisces brings it into this like super artistic place. All right, so for the Sun and Mercury in Aries, but Venus and Taurus, I found Eric Clapton. And this one jumped out at me at first just because I was like, oh, Venus and Taurus can be so musical. Like it's such a beautiful placement for music. And Venus is the domicile lord of Taurus. So it's like really happy in Taurus. And Taurus can be so like in the body, and like making music can be such like a physical, like incarnated art form. So that jumped out at me, but I didn't actually know that much about Eric Clapton. So I had to look him up a little bit. I looked at the Wikipedia article, and it was just kind of making me laugh, like, because you could feel the Aries just like radiating out of his bio, like how unbelievably successful he was as a solo artist, first of all, which, solo artist really fits for Aries, but then also like he had been in bands too. And like for one band called Cream, the description of the band was they redefined the instrumentalist's role in rock and was one of the first blues rock bands to emphasize musical virtuosity and lengthy jazz style improvisation sessions. So just that like energy of like they were the first to do it. And it also went on to say that they were hailed as one of the greatest groups in the day, but they were short-lived, which is also like very Aries, that like um Aries isn't necessarily in it for the long haul. Like one book that I have, and I cannot remember which book it was, it described Aries as a sprinter as opposed to a marathon runner. And I don't know, that image always stuck with me. But of course, like it does matter like what other placements you have in your chart. And it's not saying that you can't stick with something just because you have like the sun and Mercury in Aries or something like that. So for the Sun and Mercury in Aries, but Venus in Gemini, I found another person with an untimed chart. So again, it shows Aries rising, but we don't actually know what his rising sign was. I am not 100% on how to pronounce his name. I tried to look it up, but the best I got was Ladislav Brom. And he was someone I hadn't heard of before. I didn't see a lot of examples come up where I was immediately like, oh, I know who that is. But when I was reading about him a little bit, I thought that it fit this combination of planets and signs really well, and it was really interesting. So he was born in 1908. He was so many different things. Like he had so many different creative hats on, which I love for Venus and Gemini. Um, he was a director, an actor, a dancer. He was a writer. He wrote screenplays, newspaper articles, poetry, lyrics. He was a singer. He did a little bit of everything. So there's that Venus and Gemini. Um, and also, he made a movie in 1940, and the Czech title translates to Life is Beautiful, which to me also is very Venus and Gemini. But for that Aries component, then there was a quote on Wikipedia that said, this is a translated quote, but that is from a friend. He was a bit of an adventurer. He was not afraid to take risks. He knew what to do in every situation. Like that was the one quote they had from someone about him. So like that Aries was obviously really prominent in like how he approached the world and um, what the people around him saw about him. All right, so here's another example of someone where I hadn't actually heard of them beforehand, although it turned out I had seen her in a movie. I just didn't know her name. But I had to look up the pronunciation again, and I believe it is Shu Chi. But she has the Sun in Aries and Venus in Aries, but this time Mercury's in a different sign. It's in Taurus. So Shu Chi, according to Wikipedia, is one of the most successful Taiwanese actresses of all time. She ran away from home at 15. She started modeling at 17, went off to Hong Kong at 19 to try to break into the film industry. And it said, I can't remember if it was on Wikipedia or a different article, that she was motivated to do those things by a desire to prove to people back at home that she could succeed, which felt very Aries to me. Also that like starting young and just like setting off and facing like really that's like a major risk to do that, to go off when you're 15 and run away, or to go off to Hong Kong at 19 and try to break into the film industry. Like that takes risks and bravery. And she started off modeling, but then she was able to start um, acting, and she was able to build up this very successful acting career, but like over time, she really stuck with it. And one article was saying that that like some of the early work that she was doing, like the modeling and such, that it would, for other people, it would have been hard for her to break out, for them to break out of those roles and be able to end up with a wide variety of roles that she now has. In fact, she just directed her first film. It hasn't been released yet, but so she's now like super successful. She's a global ambassador for luxury clothing and fragrance. That feels very Taurus to me, that like very like embodied sense of beauty. And she also was invited to join the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in 2024. um, I found this other article on scmp.com, and the article was titled "Actress Shu Qi Went Soft Porn Mainstream Cinema Star Now She Filmmaker Too." Um, anyway, in this article, it said she's a hardworking actress who could do anything she wants to do. And that seems like a great combination of Aries and Taurus because Taurus has that hardworking energy to it. Um, and she is also like this great example of Aries resilience and the determination to succeed. And the Taurus energy helps her to like stick with it. She actually turned down a leading role in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I believe her agent told her to because she was like working for Coca-Cola or something at the time. Um, and yet she was able to persevere and like come back from what could have been viewed as like this major loss or setback, to be able to land bigger roles now. And now, like I said, she just directed her first film. It's called Girl, but it's in post-production according to IMDb. Final chart example I want to look at is Harry Houdini, who had the Sun and Venus in Aries, but Mercury in Pisces. And I mean, I didn't know that much about him, just like the basics, but like that was enough to even know, like from seeing his name on there, that like his like especially that like Pisces component of like the water tricks, like being able to escape underwater, and like even just that association with Pisces, not only with water, but like also with escapism. And so I loved that. But then as far as the Aries stuff goes, like I assumed he was like the first to be able to do many of these things. And that was true. So that's very Aries. But then also, um, according to Britannica, like a major component of his ability to be able to escape was due to his physical strength and abilities, as well as his abilities with locks. But like that felt very Aries to me, that like physical strength, that like athletic component to it that I hadn't considered really. So yeah, I just thought that was just a great combination of those two energies, and like showing how like Pisces and Aries could merge to create somebody who is this escape artist that's like doing all these like new things that people haven't seen before, using his like physical strength and ability to be able to do these things, and then also being able to like escape underwater. I mean, it was pretty cool. Um, yeah, so that is Harry Houdini, and that is it for charts of famous people. All right, just some basic correspondences with Aries for anyone who's interested. In terms of tarot cards, you have one major arcana card that's associated with each zodiac sign, and for Aries, that's the Emperor. There are three minor arcana cards associated with each zodiac sign, one for each decan of the zodiac sign, which I didn't get into in this video. Um, but if you want to learn more, I highly recommend, there's a book by T. Susan Chang called 36 Secrets, and I highly recommend it. But anyway, for Aries, those tarot cards would be the 2 through 4 of Wands. And then there's also one court card that's associated with each zodiac sign, and that would be the Queen of Wands for Aries. In terms of crystals, I wasn't sure if I should write if I should include crystals that are for increasing Aries energy or for like balancing it out. I wasn't sure who would be looking for what, so I just put some from each. Um, citrine for confidence and positivity, carnelian for energy and creativity, tiger's eye for courage and confidence, sunstone for energy, enthusiasm, motivation, leadership, independence, all of it. Um, and for balancing Aries energy, turquoise or aventurine for patience and soothing anger. Celestite for sleep, so you don't burn out. Sometimes Aries can try to do so much and so fast that it burns out. And rose quartz for increasing empathy and compassion for other people. And plants for increasing Aries energy. You have basil, which could be energizing. It can increase confidence and courage. Cinnamon for courage, success, energy, confidence. Bay leaves for success and strength. Thyme for courage and strength. Fennel for confidence, courage. Borage for courage. Dandelion for resilience. And plants for balancing Aries energy. Peppermint for sleep and love and to help with headaches. And lavender for peace and relaxation, lemon balm for love and empathy, chamomile for patience. In terms of color associations, uh, red and orange, very Martian colors, but then also, according to Herman of Corinthia, white color mixed with red, which I thought was interesting, but also like really pretty to picture. Thank you so much for watching. This was a really fun one to make. I really liked trying to find some interesting examples that lined up with the planetary combinations, and it's always fun to go back and read some of the older stuff like the Valens and to see like what he had to say about Aries. So that was entertaining for me, but I hope that you guys liked it, and I'm definitely going to keep doing this, do the other zodiac signs as well. I just barely squeaked this one in before Aries season ends. And if anyone's interested, I offer readings through tarot and astrology, readings through my website and also my Etsy page. Through the website, you can schedule Zoom readings, but then on Etsy, you can order like pre-recorded readings where you like tell me what you want to know, what you're asking. There's different things you can purchase, like different types of readings, and then I will record a video sort of like this and then send it to you. Send a link that's like for a private unlisted video on YouTube. So I think I still have a sale going on Etsy also if anyone is interested. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.